Okay, our last panel. Now, this year has been a very interesting year for Cloud Foundry, but there's been other technologies that have caught a lot of attention. One of them is Docker. You've heard about it mentioned multiple times tonight. Now, Docker is not the only container out there. There are others. We just heard Core OS folks announce their initiative, which has many vendor support for a container. So hey guys, you guys. Hey guys, yeah, thank you. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to invite John Wetherill, Dr. Nick, and Ramiro from Pivotal to come on up and be on a panel, and we'd like to talk about how Docker fits into the Cloud Foundry product and ecosystem, and anything related to containers and Cloud Foundry. So first of all, we had, like I said before, we had a working group this morning, or this afternoon, but before this event, where one of the things I said is I'd like to figure out how we can embrace developers who are interested in Docker and other containers, who then want to deploy their application on Cloud Foundry. And Nick had a very interesting answer. I don't know if you remember that answer, Nick. Do you remember? You don't remember?
You want me to say it like that?
Go ahead. Here, go ahead.
The Cloud Fokker project? Yeah. Is that the way? You want me to say Cloud Fokker out? Everyone enjoyed the fact that I was. It's like Voldemort. You're not allowed to say it out loud. Both of which are British.
Yeah. Tell them what Cloud Fokker is.
So, Cloud Fokker.
This is real, actually.
Fokker is I mean, there's one Fokker and lots of little Fokkers. That's the problem. So Cloud Fokker was created by Colin Humphreys from Cloud Credo, and it's this idea of taking the minimalistic idea of what you might want on your laptop, which is to take your app and build it against a build pack. And it uses the Docker tool internally, and thus he took the name. Ironically, I think they're now renaming it to Cloud Rocker, which I know Rocket came out, but I think it still uses Docker. So I don't know how naming works. Naming's hard. But this is an idea of could you use Cloud Fokker, and then we talked about perhaps we could throw in the Docker Service Broker from 30, since IBM won't open source theirs, and they've all left, haven't they? No. Oh, he's right there. Sorry. And that would be because Cloud Foundry is great, but I mean, if you're going to have services, you're just playing with ephemeral apps, and there's only so far you can get with that. So, and the same goes to that crazy portability story. Your app is portable. Yeah, we'll wait for the data to turn up on a truck. But anyway, that was the idea. So Cloud Fokker, which has Docker inside it, and then the Docker Service Broker.
Okay, all right, great. So what I'd like each of you to do is share with you your ideas about how, first of all, how containers relate to Cloud Foundry today, and how you see containers being a part of Cloud Foundry moving forward. And then we'll see if there's any questions from the audience.
I think anybody that is probably plugged into the Cloud Foundry community, they already know about Diego. They already know that Diego is going to support initially, Docker, as well as pretty much any other container technology in the future, depending on how libcontainer gets fully implemented and properly implemented, right? Now it's going to be up to the community specifically to determine how that gets presented. So when I actually heard this topic, in particular the title of the topic, that was either going to be, I remember, I think the topic of this talk particularly was, is Docker gonna eat Cloud Foundry's lunch or something like that, right? Yeah, but that was in the meetup, right? So it's like, I was wondering, first of all, is this really a valid question to begin with, right? I mean, it's like, is the carburetor market actually gonna eat on the car market? I mean, that's sort of the way I see that this thing plays. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't even know if it's a really valid question to a certain degree. If you ask about the same question, is this based on Docker the company? I mean, can Docker the company eat Cloud Foundry in the future? We're talking about potential versus kinetic energy, right? We're talking about anything. I mean, McDonald's could come someday and go straight into this business, and they can completely bankrupt all of us, right? I mean, yeah, watch out. But I mean, technically speaking, what I'm trying to say is that containers have historically been a solution to address a problem. The way Cloud Foundry started this, it was upside down. It was thinking from the developer's perspective. It did not really matter what was underneath. Initially, it was a bunch of VMs. What's a better way to do this? Was a better way to spawn everything on VMs? Maybe. Maybe that was going to be another alternative at the moment, right? They decided to implement it with VMs and containers, right? That's another way of doing this. It doesn't have to be Word and containers. It has to be Garden. It doesn't have to be any specific technology per se. It can be literally anything that the community now decides to plug in. Docker did a fantastic job as a container technology by adding social aspects to this, right? The different 128 layers, which is a beautiful thing to build things. It's a scary thing from the data center perspective in the security aspects, right? So there's a number of issues that they may or may not be addressed with the Docker platform itself. They may or may not be addressed by Rocket as an alternative or whatever alternative comes down the road tomorrow. What I'm trying to say is that think upside down. Upside down is like the developer first. The developer don't care about the container. They don't care about the IP address. They don't care about the firewall configuration. I say we, I'm an infrastructure guy. Infrastructure people, we do care about that kind of stuff, right? We care a lot about that. And we're the ones obsessing about this kind of conversation. So if you go and talk to a developer in a large corporation, they couldn't care less. They care about just pushing an app.
I got to disagree. All right. So this idea that of developers first. Developers are malicious individuals who will try to get away with, hey, we should build our own paths. That's the sort of nonsense that comes out of their mouths. If you've ever had Mongo being used in your organization, that's because a developer chose it. No ops person would have chosen it. And so I think the importance of a platform, Cloud Foundry, any other, is to bring intersection of the developer experience of both development and operations, but also that organization's set of things they wish to support. And so, yes, Docker is great, but I mean, it's kind of a bit like, hey, we've got OpenStack. Great, everyone can boot a VM up. You know what? Everyone put all sorts of crazy stuff on those VMs. And then said, hey, ops, here's a turd ball for you to look after. Have fun with that. Turd's not, you can't say it.
You can say turd.
I can say turd.
Say it, yeah. You can't say it. No, I'm just stealing.
So I just want to, I want to hear from John, because again, Active State was very early to have a product, and they were very early to adopt containers, Docker specifically. So I want to hear from you. Like, what do you think?
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with you, and I think I agree with you, but I don't fully understand what you said about turds and stuff. But I do want to say, so as Dave mentioned, we incorporated Docker into Staccato from basically the moment we heard of Docker at PyCon a year and a half ago. And for us, Docker is an implementation detail. So it is a container management system that is incredibly useful, powerful, everything. From the developer's point of view, it does not matter, and it should not matter. We're talking about abstraction layers here. For the developer's point of view, should not deal with Docker files, which is effectively building a platform. That's what the PaaS is for. The developers and the deployers and the releasers, everything should be at a higher level, concerned about things that would be described in the manifest file. If you're looking at Cloud Foundry, the way the application is partitioned and built and deployed, partitioned and deployed, etc., but not about building the platform. So Docker's great. It's an implementation detail. It should not matter to the developer. Did I agree with what you said, Dr. Nick?
Your point is excellent.
Yes. Great. I'll take that as a compliment.
Okay, I have one question, but I also want to let you. Okay, so I do have a question that I want to ask them, but I also want to give you guys a chance. Is there anybody from the audience that had a question? I think. Do you still have a question? Okay, here you go.
One was people keep using the term Diego. I don't think everyone in this room knows what Diego is. You just naturally assume everyone knows what Diego is. So I think someone should explain what Diego is for a start. The second, I think you guys are strayed away from the point of the question. The point of the question in my mind is, will Docker eat Cloud Foundry's lunch? And you then started talking about developers, which is interesting, but not actually the question. The question is, typically, could you essentially build DEAs in Docker and then some interesting orchestration framework on top of that that could replace Cloud Foundry or not is the question, I think, actually here. And so at the moment, Bosch talks to VMs. Could Bosch talk to Docker DEAs or DEAs in some kind of Docker file? And then could some nice orchestration framework or something land on top of that to ultimately replace Cloud Foundry? Or should Cloud Foundry eat that first? I think it's a good question.
Okay, so let's first take the first question, which was to please explain what Diego is. Who wants to give that a chance or a shot? All right, here you go.
Diego is basically the next generation of Cloud Foundry, right? It's a complete rewrite of the Elastic runtime with all the different components, and they're being written primarily in Go. As you know, the first generation of the software was written in Ruby. Over time, given the complexity of the code itself, they started finding issues, obviously, in the implementations with Ruby, so they decided to go into Go, and this is working dramatically better, actually. It's a very sophisticated piece of software. It takes many of the components of the original Cloud Foundry and distributes them. Right? It is actually the way a PaaS should be truly in the 2015 timeframe. And I think there's a lot of very good documentation right now. ONSI actually has a very good video on the web that anybody can go and see. Probably one of the best technical presentations that I've seen in a short time frame in any technology. And it's really worth going out and see it, and we can definitely post a URL on the site, because I think it's worth for everybody to take a look at it. So, but that's obviously, I was assuming that everybody knew that, because obviously that's people that is plugged into the community kind of know that, so I apologize if you didn't know about that. But it's really worth taking a look at where it's going. And obviously there are more questions about that, so I can keep track of all them.
Right. Well, I mean, just for those, I don't know how many people are, at a very shallow layer or understanding of Cloud Foundry, but it's kind of the evolution of Warden into which was a container technology. Many people don't know this, but Cloud Foundry was actually fairly early to adopt container technology on top of inside of Cloud Foundry. So it's just a different type of container, and now they're evolving that to be a new type of container that is learned from lots of the lessons that we've already learned.
So the lunch question, since I didn't avoid it, I just decided to talk about something else. So the Docker lunch thing is, Docker has an incredible brand, and to the point where you can be discussing with intelligent people about Cloud Foundry, and they say something stupid like, "Why do I need Cloud Foundry when I've got Docker?" And I think that question needs to be said out loud and slowly, because so you can imagine the mental intellect that's going into the question. But nonetheless, this is sort of apples to oranges, apples to massive Apple factory type of comparisons that get made as people are struggling to comprehend this new world. So it's not their fault. I don't really mean to say they're stupid. It's a really hard problem to understand. A lot of organizations haven't even begun to really understand how important their software creation organization is to their ability to stay competitive and or usurp their competitors. And so they haven't really thought too much about how software gets created, how it gets delivered, the running of services. And there's just a lot of buzzwords. And we should remove Mongo from those buzzwords first. And I mean, if we're going to filter that list, and so back to Docker. So Docker has a wonderful brand, however it got it, and I think that we're always going to have competitors. I personally just care about the existence of platforms. Whether it's, as much as I love Cloud Foundry, I hope we're successful. What I really care about is that if I worked in a large organization, there was a platform where I could get my job done. I can go to that platform and find out how to set up DNS, how to run an app, how to create an email, outbound email, how to find the local print. Where the hell did my print job go? And you know what? There's a part of me that doesn't care about the tech. I just hope we all get to that state. And but nonetheless, it is it's 5 years. It's taken us 5 years to build Cloud Foundry. So to Docker, to HashiCorp, to Vectra, to everyone else who started building a PaaS last year, best of luck.
First of all, every time you mention MongoDB, you're increasing their market share. Okay, just thought I'd let you know that. The other thing is, so as far as Docker eating Cloud Foundry for lunch or vice versa has been said, it's a category error question. Docker is a tool that's awesome for building paths. So what's going to happen is there's going to be lots of paths out there that make use of Docker.
But Docker will try to make one. Like they've already
Well, of course they will, and so will other people. So, oh, is it the company or is it the container management thing?
Now the engine. So what we all call Docker, they're now calling the Docker engine, and now that Docker is going to be this nebulous large thing, and that's the whole core OS, chucking a tantrum, which they should because they've got a business model to.
So I misunderstood in that case the question whether it was Docker, the big organization eating Cloud Foundry, or Docker, the container management system, and I'm sticking with the second of that, whereas Docker is an awesome tool for building paths, and we have recognized that from day one.
Between Docker being good for operations people and Cloud Foundry being good for people that write code and want to really build an application. And if Cloud Foundry is going to be successful, we talked about how are we going to be successful, and there's lots of people writing applications. Well, people can't write applications if none of the IT people are running Cloud Foundry for them, right? So we need to make Cloud Foundry easy to operate, including the services, not just Elastic Runtime, which is just a small piece of running the actual application, right? So I think that's a serious question that the community has to answer. Are we going to be successful at operating Cloud Foundry and the services that applications need? Make it easy for the IT people that are going to run it for the people writing the application.
So let me just repeat that quickly. No, I just want to make sure the audience can hear the question, which was, I'll summarize or paraphrase for you, which is just saying that there are two different products maybe only answers half the question. The other half of the question is if maybe Docker and the platform are new and don't have all of the features that a Cloud Foundry has, but it's simple and easy to use, it might get adopted, whereas Cloud Foundry is far more along the way, has many more features, but isn't as easy to use. And is there an issue that we need to address?
Anything that the organizations start to use is perfect. Like if they start with like Docker and that's it, and then realize, oh my God, it's one machine and it does nothing else. That was awesome, 15 minutes of my life, but I learned a lot. Or they might go to Mesos and see some other experiences. Any path they go forward with, where they end up getting a better understanding of the full vista of requirements for having a platform. I've done talks on this, and there's 20 good bullet points. If you're going to, with a straight face, argue to your engineering organization and the people funding your projects that you want to build a PaaS internally on Docker, you'd have to, with a straight face, say, and yeah, it's probably going to take about 3-4 years if we get it right the first time, because there's just so many bullet points. And so I'm happy for the organizations because there's so much new knowledge, thinking to learn, and all these tools are interesting. And we have something that works today, and if it takes them all these different technologies to go through before they realize we should probably just use Cloud Foundry, that's perfectly valid.
Let me also address some of your question in regards to the operational aspects of this, because I think you bring a very, very important point. I think if you take Cloud Foundry, the open source Cloud Foundry traditionally, just making it work on its own, it's really hard. And I think everybody that has tried that, it's a very complex process, and there are many, many ways to slice and dice it. And I think from the perspective of the companies that are part of the foundation, that is an aspect where we can all sort of differentiate with each other. We can add value in those aspects that are the weakest point of Cloud Foundry. I can only talk for what we did at Pivotal particularly, and I think the PCF product itself has made the operationalization of implementing Cloud Foundry extremely easy, and has bridged the gap between what the operations people on vSphere and vCloud Director currently can understand. And that's one area that we've done a lot of work on. What's still coming and missing, and it's very shortly, in the short time frame, is going to be coming, is all the components on OpenStack, as well as future components on AWS as well. So any cloud that the customer wants to support. But from the operational perspective, it's pretty much an area where I see that as a potential area of differentiation. You have a huge core, which is the Cloud Foundry base, Bosch as components underneath that are fully open source, and it leaves us a small area on top where some of the companies can actually make a differentiation and can actually make the payments of the mortgage, right?
Okay, Killian, no? Okay. So what I hear you saying, if I can put it in more quotable words, is that Docker is a sort of a Pied Piper, perhaps. You know, it's maybe a pass piper. I don't know. Go. You want to say something?
Yeah, you all keep on creating this like straw man, right? And then knocking it down, right? Look, I mean, so people misunderstand that Docker isn't many Docker containers, right? It's one Docker, whatever, right? I mean, so so dude, that is not what the Docker, that is not the competition for Cloud Foundry, right? The competition for Cloud Foundry is the set of paths lightweight paths that are coming out of the Docker ecosystem that do some of what Cloud Foundry does, right? They do. Sure, agreed, or will be, right? Absolutely. As is Mesos and Kubernetes and Fleet and various other little bits and pieces, right? So the real question is not, is Docker going to compete with Cloud Foundry? And then we can all beat up everybody and say how stupid they are for misunderstanding what Docker is. It is, what about this Docker ecosystem, the stuff that's coming out of there, and is that a threat to Cloud Foundry, right? And I think one answer is that Cloud Foundry is becoming part of that Docker ecosystem by doing Diego. Right? And so that's a reasonable enough answer, right? I think probably the biggest threat, right, is the fact that when I want to run a Cloud Foundry instance that has 10 gigs of app memory, I have to deploy 60 gigs worth of stuff because there's 50 gigs of overhead, right, in that instance of Cloud Foundry, right? Unlike the lightweight Docker paths, right? When I do that, I spend 3 days or whatever coming up with the Bosch manifest, and so on and so on. There's a whole set of things that we could all talk about, right? But knocking down this stupid straw man of stupid people who don't understand Docker, that's just idiotic, right? The reality is there's a set of lightweight paths coming out of the Docker ecosystem that do things that are interesting to some people, right? How is Cloud Foundry going to respond to those? And I think the gent's question over there was kind of leading the answer, right? Which is, how the hell is Cloud Foundry going to be as easy to deploy, manage, and operate as some of these lightweight paths are, okay?
Right. Okay. Well, we don't even need to name names because it's none, right? Okay. So. Okay, so very good point. Killian now just threw the word stupid. Okay, so we're back to stupid. Yeah, no turd. Okay, so I think we actually did complete the question and answer. And I'm going to just summarize is that the original comparisons perhaps were unfair and incorrect, but that there is an ecosystem. In fact, there are lots of alternatives to PaaS other than Cloud Foundry, not even having to do with containers. So the not quite consensus, but perhaps a takeaway from that is that we have some work to do to make Cloud Foundry easier to use. And if we do that effectively in 2015, we will have great success. Does anybody have anything else to say? Great. We are well over time, and so I get the final word. Let's make that our goal, and I think we should have lots of success in 2015. Now, let's thank our panelists for getting up here and tackling this fun question. You guys can go.